residences. We did hear a lot about, not only from the public, but from the board about really analyzing and looking at that because there may be a preference for something on the north side of the site as well to kind of steer headlights more directly towards Depot Street and not necessarily sweeping along a number of residences. And I will note that in that final product, we did kind of look at that seriously, tried to iron things out and really reduce the impacts there and get more of a straight shot. So headlights aren't kind of angled as much off to the side, but really going straight out to Depot from there. Like I said, I'll yield my time back to the board and the public for any comments. Move forward.
Gentlemen,
Have any questions?
go ahead, John.
Can I borrow your podium, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
It's not mine.
my back is. Well, first of all, I'm usually on that side. I did recuse myself again out of an abundance of caution. I have worked for Maine Health going on my 37th year. I'm currently working at Miles. I have nothing but respect for Maine Health and Miles. I do have a couple of concerns that I'd like to bring up. And I know Brooks, you've been working on it, but I know parking at Miles has been kind of an issue. I think that's fair. Anybody to say.
I just
But,
came back from driving the shuttle, so absolutely.
no, I understand that, and I'm not trying to nitpick, I'm just saying. And I'm gonna let the board members take maybe more of a lead on that, but. On this development, do you feel comfortable with the parking and how you guys have sketched it out and, you know, if it grows, that, do you guys feel comfortable with your plan?
So, Peter, you want me to answer that? I'm fine answering. If you want to.
I'll happily answer you.
Okay, so Peter just mentioned we have 73 spaces, which is probably gonna be more than enough for both the staff and the patients that we're gonna have coming in that location. But also, as Peter noted, when and if the town decides to go forward with the rec center, that there's additional parking that would be available there. We'd be able to put more parking on that site. So, and the rec center largely, you know, my guess is, and we wouldn't know right now what the use of that would be, but it would probably likely be at altering times. So the parking would be that much more ample for both the rec center and the medical center. So.
And it would not be my purview to ask a couple of other concerns or questions, but as a resident of Waldeboro, I certainly can.
Yeah.
So being in healthcare for 37 years, I know a little bit.
Created a
about it.
monster here.
I know. I know a little bit about it. So I have two concerns. I hope I'm wrong. I probably am. But does Maine Health, as a matter of course, I think building the building is going to be the easy part. But is there a plan, does Maine Health, Cindy, maybe do you guys like reconnoiter the area? Is the workforce going to just shift itself over to the new building? Or do you expect it to grow? And then how are you going to staff it? Does that come into play?
I'm happy to speak to staffing of the building. So currently there are two provider offices here in town.
Yes.
One is Penn Bay Medical Center, one is Lincoln Health, all Maine Health.
Yeah.
They are currently staffed today. And as I think everybody's aware, workforce is a continuous issue. We have staffing now to support the providers we have. And when we move into the new facility, we'll still need that same number of staff.
Right.
And there may be some efficiencies, so potentially down the road, we can streamline things, and as things become more digital, there'll be things that happen that will require less front office staff probably. And we don't see any need at this point for growth in the number of providers that we're going to put into that facility because it's serving the population today, and we think we're going to be more efficient in a new building with enough exam rooms. So that's the plan today. In 10 years. You know, who knows what the landscape for staffing and needs in the community will be, but that'll be an ongoing assessment.
So you don't expect to need more employees at the new site? You don't expect to grow, you know, over the next couple of years? So you feel comfortable with that you can, I guess I'm beating around the bush. This isn't going to be a white elephant, is it? I mean, because healthcare, I mean, I see it all over, you know, you don't have the staff. I mean, this.
Well, I would say that today, the needs of this community require two provider practices with the number of providers we have. And in fact, I would say that sometimes people can't get in and get seen when they want to get seen because they're so busy. So I don't see that going away. I don't see the need for primary care changing. In fact, primary care across the state is increasing. And that need, because we're trying to get people to go to the right level of care. And the best place to get your regular care is through your primary care office. So I don't see it being built, and if you're worried that it won't get filled, I'll just refer you to the Watson Center, which is on the Damascotta question.
Yeah, well, no, what I
God,
meant,
Kevin, we're-
Cindy, is there'll be so much improvement that you'll need more workers and then you can't find them. That was how I was gonna couch it.
I don't foresee that right now, that we'll need more workers, because part of this is bringing the two workforces from
I see.
Penn Bay's
Okay.
site and our site together to work together in one office.
Yeah, one more thing to add to that. So Jonathan, you know, in the hospital, we struggle for staffing. That's a 24/7 environment.
Yeah.
And same with our long-term care, we have 24/7, right? Those are tough to staff because you require a lot of night staff. When you're doing a doctor's office, those are more desirable positions because they're generally, you know,
Right.
during their daytime hours, right? And so it's easier for us to attract staff to fill those positions. And so, you know, I was just literally at the old Waldoboro office today, and like, they're fully staffed. They look really good. That team's running. It is, we're in a nice new building.
So you don't run into the traveler type thing. where those-
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I guess that answers my question. Cindy, do I still have a job?
As long as I'm there, you are.
That's right.
I don't even think slip yet.
Gotta go to work tomorrow.
I do. Thank you.
I have a number of questions, if you guys are all set. So the wings of the building are, each end is flat, right? And there's some equipment up there. Is
Yep.
that noisy?
Is it noisy?
What's up
Right now,
there?
there's no equipment.
Compressors and,
That's a great question. There's, we believe there's just two, I believe there's just two pieces of equipment. They are part of the HVAC. They're going on the flat sides of the wings there. On this side here. We're still kind of working out, is it gonna be one, or is it gonna be one larger unit or two smaller units?
Yeah, I think it'll be two smaller
Two
units
units.
and there'll be screening.
Yep.
Provided, so.
so I asked that those are closest to the neighbors, are they noisy?
Yeah, and they're gonna be well below any sort of decibel level
Right.
that'll be observed on abutting properties now.
We've
They're
actually
quiet.
made a decision, there was one larger unit. Initially designed for the planned north end of the building where you would drive in, and visually it was a kind of in your face.
Right.
So we decided to downsize the units, put one at the other end of the building to minimize that, the aesthetic part of it.
And is there need to have a generator? I noticed, I mean, you screened the dumpster area and stuff like that, but is that another thing? A piece of equipment that's gonna be out on the lawn and screened, or?
That's a
So-
great question, yeah. That's tentatively where a pad would be for it. And that would really only be used in the need for a power outage in that case, and that would be screened.
And so propane goes there too, I mean,
Right now, propane tank would be next to the dumpster pad there.
Yeah.
And
it's that
screen,
far, huh?
and screen.
Yeah, we're still,
Oh, was your question whether it would be
Well,
a propane?
Looking at tanks, looking at
Oh, yeah, okay,
equipment,
yeah,
all that
right.
stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right now, they're supposed to be above ground and screened, not only with fencing, but planting.
So it's screened similar to the dumpster with a cedar
Correct.
saw, and the fence along your southeast line there, is that a solid fence? What is that?
It's intended
fence?
to be a 6-foot tall privacy style fence.
Does privacy style mean it's
It's solid.
trellis, it's solid, or
It's solid, yes.
okay. And then the only other question I had, I mean, you guys, I think the front of the building's gonna look great with your landscaping plan that you have in these documents. But I do think that going along the road, as you exit, as you pointed out, headlights, you know, the 3:30 to 5:30 traffic, everybody leaving the job and on Winter's Eve. Those trees are 50 to 60 feet apart. I would like to see more screening along there because there's still gonna be headlights coming to those northern neighbors. Some lower story or trees closer together, or a mix of deciduous and evergreen or something that just is all the traffic is, they're turning out of that driveway and heading up and it's super sparse there.
That's something we'd certainly be open to.
Because we asked for buffering for the parking lot and you provided the trees needed in the parking lot, but. And it's true that the parking lot's in the middle of the site, but you're still, one of the points of having this in our ordinance is that people aren't looking at big parking lots if they don't absolutely have to.
Sure. That's something we'd be open to considering too, like just strategic landscape specifically really intended to block headlights to neighbors. And it's something we can certainly work
Mhm.
with, not only the board of it, but staff with as well.
So as a practical matter, the headlight sweep would go. You either exit the parking lot from the lower or the upper and take a right. And then once you make the turn, then it doesn't
Mhm.
become an issue then, but it's just that sweep when you make the turn. So might not need it all the way up,
Right.
but just select, like Henry said, selectively.
Just a little bit more there, because it's a little fringe of old landscaping there, but it's
Yeah,
way west.
I
of
will
where
say
it
these
used to
are, again, we don't really intend to remove much of any tree here. I mean, most of it is, we're affecting the tree line per se, but I don't think we're touching the trunks
be.
themselves.
Sort of below where we need it though,
Yeah,
there.
exactly. I understand what you're saying. There are larger trees there, but you're right, the understory is lacking. The budding house, I believe, up this direction here. Again, maybe strategically locating a few shrubs and trees in these areas,
Something
may
to break
really
it up.
support that screening for the neighbors.
Okay. And then so are you, so those last little bit of parking spaces as you're going down the driveway, the last little bits you've got what, 5 spots on the left there, are those sort of for the future path to the river, or are you committing to any kind of amenity for that way for the town? I think that came up.
That's a
the-
great question. They're not specifically for that reason. I don't
Mhm.
think they're gonna be signed for that, specifically for trail access. I think at any time when the town project decides to move forward, that's something that can help and the town can certainly work with in terms of allocating those spots appropriately. The town ordinance requires 53 spaces for a building this size. By 73, so there is that kind of buffer already. And again, if the town use decides to go in closer to the road there with some allocated parking for that as well at that time, there certainly should be enough parking to supply some to the public. And however that gets allocated, I think would have to be a discussion between the town and Maine Health at that time.
And how do you think the rest of the property down to the river is going to be managed? Is that going to be just mown around the building and then go to like a hayfield? So you could potentially mow a path down to the river while you got the mowers out there?
Yeah, so right now.
I'm pushing
when
for it.
When it comes to where the disturbance is, especially, we're gonna have disturbance down for grading down within this area here.
Right.
A lot of those slopes are proposed to actually go back with a low mow mix, something that grow up taller, establish things that have wildflowers, different native species in them. So the intent is to really keep it not a weekly mowing,
Right.
but more of, yes, more returning to a more native or natural growth there. And if it's something that becomes part of the maintenance plan, I don't know if that's, again, between the common ownership there, between Maine Health and the town for the property, that's something that'll have to be discussed in how that's maintained.
I have a few things I'd like to say if you're done, Barbara.
Let me just wait. I'm almost through my little list here. Can't read my own writing. Yeah, I think I'm good. Go ahead.
So first of all, I really appreciate the fact that you altered the configuration of the parking and the approach, because I think that really makes a huge difference, and I appreciate that you did that. I think it's a vast improvement over what you came with last time. And I think that, it's a great project. I really embrace it wholeheartedly. I think we need it, and it's a great project. So things I wouldn't say are sort of superficial in a way, but I think they're sort of important. Well, one of them is not actually, which is the issue around light pollution. How much light is going to be emitting from the space at any given hour of the day? Whether it's going to be lit all night long for safety reasons, or some way that it's not gonna be this huge tower of light coming out of that space, interrupting, your neighbors as well as just a sort of an eyesore for light pollution generally in Waldeboro. So could you address that?
Yeah.
First?
Yeah, all the lighting, certainly there was a photometric plan provided that shows there's no light pollution spilling over to abutting properties. All lighting will be LED and dark sky compliant. Imagine outside of some safety lighting that might be required just near the building, the parking lot lighting can be on a timer. So those things can be mitigated, so there's not, you don't have that same part, you're not gonna have the Walmart parking lights on all night, as it were. If I were to just pick a random box store.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's one thing I was concerned about. The other thing is, I was looking at your plan for vegetation and I was hoping that perhaps, because I know there was a lot of things I didn't, I'm not a gardener, so I don't really know these things, but I do know that it'd be nice to have more indigenous plantings as opposed to things that are, from other places. In keeping sort of with what is happening in Maine, and I think it would be great to do that on the front of that building in those places where it's possible. So then number one. Number two, aesthetically, it is very institutional. I mean, it's not a particularly attractive building that way. And I'm wondering whether some allocation can be made for some kind of art on the exterior of the building, whether it be sculpture or something that's on the face of the building that would sort of make it a little bit less institutional, a little bit more, user friendly, approachable, warmer, in some way, whether it be in the gardens there or whether it be on the facade itself. I mean, there's a lot of great artists in Maine, some of them who can do site specific work. And I think it'd be really great for the community to have something. I mean, I'm not talking about some kind of five-masted schooner on it. I don't mean that, but something really interesting and contemporary. So I'd like you to consider that, because I think when you get done with this project, it is with all that parking lot area, regardless of how many trees you put on it, it's still gonna come across as being something very institutional in a very residential setting. So, and I think people coming into a facility like that want to see something that has some life to it and have some kind of warmth or inviting in some way. And art often, is the medium for that. That's, other than that, I think, wow. Good for you guys. I think it's great.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. To certainly take some of those into consideration in the future.
Did everyone have a chance to read this letter from one of the neighbors? We just got it, so. Have you had a chance to look at it?
I have, yes.
Traffic volume?
Yep.
It's not, I don't think it's anything we can really deal with, that the town has to deal with somehow, is people coming out of Depot Street and trying to go north on Route 1 is an issue. But otherwise, he seems favorable to the plan, so.
I forgot to add that too, and I brought this up at the last meeting about that, John. There should be a light there of some kind, because that coming out of there, even now, I mean, coming onto Route 1 off of Depot Street, it's really problematic. If you stack people up there, it's gonna be a real problem. I think there has to be a light there. I know you're saying, because I heard you say before, it doesn't meet the requirement for DOT approval or analysis, but I think that regardless of whether it meets that or not, it's going to be a problem, and something's got to be done sooner or later, or there's going to be accidents there, and that's going to be dead. People even crossing, because a lot of people want to cross over and go down Jefferson Street or go down Jefferson Street, and crossing over is really problematic. Anyone who wants to cross over is going to back up. Everyone wants to turn. It's a problem. I think. I think you should address it sooner rather than later, on your own in some way or other, with the state.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment. I heard a little bit about that letter and reading it and hearing how the neighborhood typically diverts up and over towards the Hannaford's light, as there is a light there, to avoid some of that. I know I've certainly worked with Max in coordination, talking to DOT in terms of signals at that intersection. And at this time, DOT has said, you know, it's really not warranted there. I hear the concern from the public, I do hear that. And that's why it hasn't been included in this particular project. I know it's something that potentially going forward, if the site may trip a threshold in the future, that's something that can be handled at that point as well.
Yeah, and speaking with David Allen from the DOT, he noted that this project wouldn't trigger anything, but there were traffic calming measures done earlier in 2010, which I know is a bit of a while ago, but this project wouldn't trigger anything at the Depot Street intersection, whereas once a community center is there, then that would probably be something where something happens. And that's when DOT would want to step in to do a change.
That location as well, in terms of, and looking at the history of it, I recognize there's the concern there for those who live here. And I know about 20 years ago, it was about a high crash location. And in the since then, I believe, again, you can look at kind of probably the timing, the signalizing of the lights going in there along Route 1 at that time really reduced that intersection's danger and actually made it much safer. So I do hear that concern, but I guess if you look at the history of that intersection certainly becomes safer over time. I'm not saying it's a perfect intersection by any means, but it has gone from, again, 20 years ago being considered a high crash location to being removed from that status.
They changed the design, they put the island in and the turning lane and all that kind of stuff, so.
But in the summer,
They
I
made some
sat
tweaks.
that intersection for 5 minutes, unable to get across it or turn because the sheer volume of traffic coming up and down Route 1 in the summer. You know, so that goes on for 3 months. You know, in the winter, yeah, it's less of a concern, but but in the summer, it's kind of nightmarish. You know, I avoid it. Where you're gonna have people cutting through the lot, through the
Subway?
town hall.
Or the
No,
town hall.
town hall
Okay.
or subway parking lots to get out there. It's gonna be, that's gonna make people happy here for sure. But, I guess as long as you're honest, I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, that, and where the, I don't know, I mean, it can. And, I mean, if the state is saying it's not an issue. Is there any way to circumvent that, even though the state doesn't know, because they're just basing it on. Their own supposition about what's coming down that street and what Route 1 is like. But those of us in town know really more what that's like.
No, they don't.
I-
They don't try to make a left-hand turn there. It's brutal getting out of there. Can't do it.
Can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you sit there forever.
I'd raised it to DOT. Part of it is that it's Route 1, it's their jurisdiction, and I remember calling and saying. People have raised concerns about this with the main health moving in, and then that's just right, that's half a mile, whatever, from Route 1, and he said, okay, what do you want me to do about it? And
Light.
I said, and is there something that can be done to address traffic concerns? And he's like, not with this. When you get to a community center, then the two combined will definitely trigger it, but it's gonna, not for now, and I don't know. So that's just me reporting from DOT. But I see Brendan's hand up. I don't know if you want to start.
Is it because of the number of trips? Like the number of trips isn't enough? Like what specifically is the DOT's?
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, they're looking at the trip count based off the International Traffic Engineering standards on, what a use like this generates. So those trip counts are based off of historical data and analyzing trip counts of uses like medical office buildings or restaurants, et cetera. And so that is kept up to date as more projects go underway and counts are done, analysis is done. And what triggers the DOT analysis and review is called a traffic moving permit. And when the peak rates hit 100 at a peak rate,
100 cars per hour.
That triggers that DOT level of review. At that time, they actually look at the nearest intersection in either direction. the nearest major intersection in that direction. Like I said, this project is about, depending on the day, you look at the AM and PM peak rate hours. On weekend and weekdays, you're triggering between 42, 54, and 60 peak hour trips. And if you look at Saturday, Sunday, and a weekday. And none of those do hit 100 threshold. They're about halfway there. And I will say, depending on what goes in there for town use, if it's a smaller use, it's actually not even guaranteed to really trigger that 100 threshold.
But they also look at
but it is
accident
possible.
rates too, at certain intersections, right? That must be a triggering factor.
What is the basis of your turnover in the facility? I mean, how many patients come in per hour?
Oh, I guess that's not really, I guess, how they're generating the trips there. Those trips are really more of, if you were to go out, I don't know if you've ever seen the wire on the road, where they're watching cars and counting them as they go over, but not necessarily patients, but it could also be doctor, patient, et cetera, when it comes to a medical use. For a restaurant, it could be those working at the restaurant as well as eating at the establishment, just to pick a few of the uses there. I guess I'm trying to answer your question, but if you could clarify a little bit more. of your question.
I actually don't quite understand that. I mean, because if the turnover rate, I think, whatever it is, each patient gets 15 minutes with their doctor, and so every doctor's getting 4 patients an hour, right? And you have whatever number of doctors, so there you have that many people cycling through the building, and you have that many people then leaving and coming and going throughout the hours. I mean, that would make more sense to me, is how you document the number, how many trips there are, as opposed to just having I don't know what the basis of your trip schedule of number of trips is then. If you're not basing it on the number of appointments you expect in any given hour.
That's a good point. What they're based on is actually the physical car count, not necessarily patient count or employee count, but physical car count that would be going for. So when they look at the counts, again, the counts for the memorandum, the traffic study are done via the ITE manual, the International Traffic Engineering Manual. And those counts are created in that manual by studying sites such as this one and other sites, different uses, right? So somebody is parked there, clipping counts of cars moving in and out, not necessarily people, but cars themselves, so vehicle trips.
Well, we're right, cars and people, I mean, I'm equating them, but I don't understand if this facility, as a medical facility that turns over people rather quickly, or is supposed to, they should have some kind of schedule that says, okay, a medical facility like this, with this many offices, will have this many trips attached to it in any given hour. I don't know where you're coming up with your count. I mean, there's no facility there, so there's nothing to click.
Did you develop the number, or is this already in the regulations?
Yeah, this is a regulatory number, so the standard is pulled from the International Traffic Engineering Manual. And that manual has the trip count generations from other projects that are relatable. So again, other medical office buildings that have been studied and counted physically that do exist. Other restaurants, other post office, other municipal uses, things like that.
Is it done by square foot? What's the denominator?
This one is done, it's a mixture of square footage, and then we guesstimate about how many employees. Right? And we factored in a nice cushion of how many employees there may be, or guesstimated. But yeah, it's a factor of square footage versus employees for the medical use. Depending on the use, it is, if it was again, I'm going to use restaurant because I'm also familiar with it. For restaurant use, they do it by number of seats in a restaurant, things like that.
Well, I mean, it would be a shame if after putting a medical facility there were a bunch of accidents on Route 1, it would be antithetical to the cause, right? I mean, that would be really heartbreaking. I mean, because there have been accidents. There's accidents up all and down Route 1, because of how busy it gets. So I don't know. I think it's kind of risky, but I'm not going to buck City Hall here in that regard. If they say that you can do it, you can do it. But I don't know. I'm skeptical.
But
There's one thing the facility could do when it's in operation. And that is give people who are there and leaving departure instructions. And
Go left.
suggest that at the end of the intersection of Depot Street and Route 1, they turn right
Mhm.
and then make their left turn and come around. that would, if they pay attention to that, could mitigate some of the issues.
Very
It's
much.
easy to make a right turn off of Depot Street. Never a problem. And people, by the way, coming from Jefferson across Route 1 to Depot have the same problem
Mhm.
doing that as folks do coming from Depot going over to Jefferson. It's tricky.
Okay. Anything else? Any comments from anyone?
I have a question on the sidewalk. Will there be any improvements made to that? That's in disrepair, in my opinion, and it doesn't go all the way up to the entrance of that. It's gonna stay like it is, or the lower part is pretty much overgrown with briars. You have to walk over into somebody's yard to get by it.
That would be probably more of a item for the Public Works, trying to get that expansion there from them, because you're talking about the sidewalk that's on Depot Street. You're not talking about one that goes into this
Yeah, I'm
property.
talking about this sidewalk on, it's got holes in it too. It's
Yeah.
washing out, it's in
Is it,
disrepair.
and that's on the opposite side of the street?
Yeah, you'll have to have
Right.
a crosswalk as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that Public Works would have to be involved in.
Well, it
Unless
seems like that would be a standard.
Right.
Thing that they would do. It's been like that since I moved here.
And I think, well, and I can't speak for the conditions throughout the whole thing for the expansion to get to this site. I don't know if part of it might have just been a facility like this where we want to encourage walking to it. Probably wasn't there. It was just the light industrial business incubator for a time. It was just a few people. This is different. We can actually get some grant funding now to sort of encourage safe walking to the site and improving those sidewalks as well. But again, that's something I'd have to work with the Public Works Department about.
And if we did get safely up a sidewalk along Depot Street, there's nothing particularly marking the edge of the driveway for pedestrians. It's just walking along the edge of the driveway. Is that how you're?
Yeah, if you were to walk to the facility, yes.
Mhm. Is it wide enough to put a sidewalk within that? Or, I mean, that could be another level of.
Certainly could be something where maybe you could consider painting the shoulder there, so where you almost have a shared lane. Saying, things like beware of pedestrians. Just like,
Hopefully that becomes something that happens. That would be nice. Yes, John.
Just one comment, the site plan, that is the most professional, detailed, voluminous site plan I've seen in my 8 years here. I don't know who the principals are, but that was just done. I actually did go over it also. It took me like 3 weeks. But I got one question. The question is, if this all goes through, when do you break ground and start this?
that's a great question.
I mean, do you have a day that you say, okay, we've got all our T's crossed and I's dotted, time to break ground?
That's a great question. Work is actually, so demolition of the old building was started. So they were able to actually get that. They're starting mitigation of some of the items in that building to make improvements and make sure any hazardous materials are taken care of, things like that, appropriate demolition. But actual construction, you guys anticipating either late winter, or spring 2025?
Yeah, probably, we should have, what they call construction documents ready by, early November, which will allow the general contractor to go out to bid. We might be able to get the site work started, in December, late Q4 of this year.
So one other question I had. If you could just generally explain this, I see where your stormwater retention area is
Mhm.
there, but it's sort of downhill of the flood zone mark area that comes way up surprisingly, way up into the site. How does that work? Suppose there is a flood.
Mhm.
Is it gonna go into your stormwater drainage?
No, stormwater is above the floodplain elevation there. Where the bottom of that pond probably is closer to that floodplain elevation. But it is burned up and the spillway is above the floodplain elevation, well above at least, I'm gonna say at least 2 feet, because that's usually the standard, be 2 feet above the flood elevation. But it is more than 2 feet above the flood elevation there.
And there is a flood,
Mhm.
that seems like it's more than a 100-year rainstorm event. Does the stormwater thing still work in
Yeah,
that situation?
in 100 year.
Well, whatever it's designed, what is it designed?
It's analyzed at the 2, 10, and 25 year for peak rates. And all the pipes are sized for that as well. We certainly know that there can be flash with 100 and 500, et cetera, where you get that flash rainfall. That's the typical standard of care, is that 2, 10, and 25.
So because the floodplain line and the floor elevation, they weren't that different from each other. Right, and is that,
No,
you're the expert.
yeah,
but
no, that's a
is
great
that good?
question. We're well above the floodplain elevation. I believe that building that's 72 and that floodplain elevation is closer down into the 50s there.
Okay,
So we're well above that.
okay.
And I can go in and go through and confirm that exact elevation for you.
It's in the 70s.
I'm kind of jumping around. Don't want to miss what there's anything.
Got it worked out, but I had thought that up towards the neighbors was getting into the 70 elevations and just wondering how it all works.
No, that's a great question. We're down there, 63, 62, 61, 60.
And Brendan, was looking for my silt fests in my my construction line, edge of construction line plan on here. Did you see it?
So the floodplain elevation there that line follows is roughly around that 51, 52. If I were to look at this plan, that floodplain line, and then the building itself is up at 72. Great question.
Is that something you want to raise?
Oh, I was gonna. Doing the checklist.
You have a checklist?
Well, the check,
No, you have.
Oh, which one's up in the checklist?
yeah,
Okay,
the,
good. That's good.
I did also get, and everyone should have a copy of the letter from Ryan Thomas and Ann Booker, who live on Depot Street. It was with, should be underneath the items he got there. Well, you can hold on to this if you want. The comments they raised were primarily what you already raised, Eric, just concern about traffic going from the site to the Route 1 Depot intersection. And that, I believe, was actually both comments, but yeah, that's just for the record. And it was kind of already addressed. I think there was also some comment, and I'm surprised I didn't see it in there. There's the 3 trees that are looking at the southeastern parts of the property lines with the neighbors.
Over by the entrance?
Yeah, near the entrance, there's the 3 trees. Is there going to be a fence or any other vegetation that goes along those neighbors' property lines, or is it?
Along this south line?
Yes.
Yep, there is a fence proposed, at least to that point.
Okay. Just want to be sure.
There's a fence there on somebody else's property right now.
It always comes up.
I've spoken with them, yeah. So
Yeah.
we have had a conversation about
Okay.
what that would look
The
like.
comment must have been an old one for me then. And then there were a few items that the rest of the board members did get. You should have a letter from the Waldeboro Utility District stating that the capacity to transport and treat the amount of gallons that are predicted for the site is adequate, and so should be no problems from the utility district to service the site. Same thing from Maine Water. For the specifications they've been given. Let's see, the expected increase in water usage is within the water system's available capacity. Stack pressure in the area is approximately 50 pressure. The Waldeboro Water Department does have sufficient capacity from the existing 12-inch iron water main in the Depot Street driveway to serve this project. And if the town decides to do a community center later on, we'll be able to tap either of those extensions. And there's also an old letter. I say an old letter because I had to get it at the time, saying that this site wouldn't be impacting any historic significant.
And is there a fire hydrant along the street?
There's one right at the head of the driveway.
Okay.
I have one more question regarding the light. I think it's inevitable that we're gonna be revisiting that, or you folks will be revisiting it. I'm wondering, what's the process to go through to get to a light?
Light at the intersection,
Yeah,
that would be working with the Department of Transportation, and trying to make the case to their engineers that it's needed.
I mean, can that take years or? Bureaucracy can be.
I wish to not say anything because we have a grant in the works to get some speed tables from them, and I don't want to say anything. And something like this would then be another grant project we can do with them as well.
So that's, and
Henry,
I could speak a little bit.
Yeah,
At least,
when they do the traffic count study, what time of year, and that kind of thing.
I'd be happy to speak to a little bit of that process too, just if you're kind of, kind of education and curiosity there. Typically, if, if the DOT threshold is tripped, you're looking at going out and actually doing a formal count in the field during the April timeline. That's typically in this area, it begins, the window opens in April and goes to about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So it's open for that kind of spring till late summer to formally get the counts. And then there's actually a meeting with DOT reviewing those counts together. It's actually in coordination with the municipality and staff usually. That permit process in general, once started, is about a 10 to 12 month process. At that point, the DOT issues that permit and the work to be done is allocated and, construction documents are made and the work can then proceed after that on whatever, if it's whatever that timeline may be for construction at that point. But just give you an idea of process and timeline. I would anticipate about a 10 to 12 month process. That's typically how long that takes.
I don't believe it will happen in 12 months personally. What's that like?
Now they can, it's very simple. You go down to the light, make a right, go through the gas station, come on around and make a left. It's I live on Depot Street. It's almost an impossibility to get off on Depot Street and make a left-hand turn. Trust me, I've lived there for 94 years.
I don't, I don't understand why a neighbor's clearly uses the street and understands the dynamics of it, why that can't overrule what the state thinks. I mean, or why the town can't say, okay, look, we have a problem here. I don't care what you think. We know we have a problem here. We're not gonna wait for a problem to occur. We want to put a light there. I mean, under that criteria, there's probably barely enough cars coming down Route 32 to warrant a light there. But we know that's necessary. I mean, I'm just shocked that there's no, a way around this issue when we know as people who live in Waldoboro that that's a problem. They know it's a problem.
What's the creative ways people
I don't get it.
get
I
around
don't, I don't,
it? They
I
go
just
through
don't
this
understand.
lot here
It's-
and they
To
do all
me,
kinds of
that's
stuff.
a bureaucratic, BS, as far as I'm concerned.
And when we bring patients and staff out at 5:30, it's gonna back, I don't think they'll ever get
They're a
out.
mess.
I can't speak for what DOT does on this. They're doing the whole state and like we've had different requests to lower the speed limit on West Main Street from Moody's Diner to go into the village, and they didn't think it was warranted because even though the one person who started that request says, no, you need to slow it down. They have an interesting system where determining speed limit is based on the average speed limit of the people going down there now. So if people are going there a lot faster than the speed limit, then yeah, you can see the interesting turnaround there. I can't answer for some of this. I just
I'm just
can't.
surprised that the town has no say in the matter. They can't overrule and say, we know this town and we know this is a problem.
We
In
try.
advance. So to wait for some accidents to happen or whatever's gonna happen there. before it can be triggered as an issue that needs to be addressed. I mean,
It's like the
shocking.
it's like the downtown intersection too. We've known that's a problem. Julie and I have always known that's a problem. And we keep telling the DOT, we need help down here, and it's a matter of working with them to get a solution down there. But we can't just randomly do something one day, because then DOT will find out. And then we spent all this money trying this traffic calming measure for the DOT to then turn around and say, that's our jurisdiction. I can't, we work with DOT. We can't overrule DOT.
Can a congressman get involved?
There you go.
I'm not,
Good
yeah.
point.
certainly can.
They should. Agree.
Okay, any other comments? Or questions? Should we go through the checklist now?
Yes.
And I would like Max to take over that chore for us, because he's so good at it.
Thank you. First item, are there any conflicts of interest? Brendan and Johnny have recused themselves at the start of this review. Are there any others that would like to recuse or point out a potential conflict? Hearing none. Does the applicant have standing? There was exhibit 3 shows the updated deeds of the property showing Maine Health as the owner. We'll get into what the application is complete in just a moment. Then we have the findings of facts, which right here.
Did we all receive blank copies of it?
What?
Of the findings of facts, the submission checklist? Is it in this book?
John has it. Eric,
Yeah.
did you get the checklist?
I don't remember seeing it.
Okay. I can go make a copy of it unless Johnny or Brendan, do either of you have a checklist that?
You want to,
Brendan, you have?
you take my trip.
Yeah, no, but I think we're all set.
Okay.
You don't want it,
I
Eric?
guess we're all set. Okay, findings of facts. Town of Waldeboro Planning Board has considered the following application for 126 Depot Street, which is map U9, lot 29, including supported data, staff review comments, and related materials containing the record. The Town of Waldeboro makes the following findings of fact. Project description: the applicant is changing the use of the site to create a medical office through the construction of a new structure. The applicant / owner. The applicant and owner is Maine Health, being represented by Spago Technics. Project location. Property under consideration is map U9, lot 29. The lot has a total acreage of 13.5 acres according to Waldeboro's tax assessor's agent. Zoning. The lot is in Route 1 Commercial B District, which does allow medical offices with applicable approval. The lot has a shoreland zone, however, the proposed use will not be taking place in the shoreland zone. Medical offices require planning board approval in the Route 1 Commercial B District. Existing land use was a business incubator / light industrial use. Proposed land use, medical office building. Previous permits, there were quite a few in the town office files, but it mostly focused on just building incubator and septic hookups. Application submission. Town planner deemed the application is ready, complete for review, with the applicant submitting the following. I could go through everything, but just leave it at the site plan review copy cover sheet. Copy of the deed, site plan maps, responses to all standards outlined in the land use ordinance, traffic impact analysis, stormwater exhibits, lighting exhibits, which I don't know if we've got these. The Lincoln County News ran in their September 19th and September 26th editions of their newspaper the legal advertisement for the public hearing of this application. On September 17th, the town office also mailed out notices to the owners of properties that directly abut the properties, as well the property owners on Depot Street between Route 1 and the railroad tracks. Town planner Max Johnstone conducted a brief site visit on September 3rd, 2024, when I thought the meeting was going to happen 2 weeks ago. However, site visitation was limited to the ongoing demolition. Those are our findings of facts. So now the checklist. Starting with section 3.5.1, the application was accepted by the planner. Item 2, these were submitted on town office forms that were provided to the applicant. 3, applicant information was provided, which was accepted by the planner. The property location and details are shown on a cover sheet or page 6 of the massive book if people want to find it. Verification of ownership, as explained a while ago. Exhibit 3 does show the deeds of the property. Fees paid, they were accepted by the planner. Estimated cost and construction. Exhibit 8 does show the site work, but it does not show the potential construction cost of the building. I just had that as a note. Was there an estimate for the cost for the building construction?
That that is something that can be made available to staff if that's required. Then I believe that does exist.
That's up to the board if that's something that's necessary as a condition of approval, or if it's not necessary at this time.
I don't think it's necessary.
I can give you a random order of magnitude.
It certainly wasn't $131 per square foot, is which I figured out.
Well, it's closer to 700 square foot.
Right. Well, there's that. Description of the project that was provided in the cover sheet and letter to planner that you can find at the beginning of the book. Anticipated start and completion dates. I had it as about an 18-month project. It's originally was starting in fall, but you said this was maybe going to be around late winter, spring you're looking at?
Actual construction will probably likely be in a 12-month.
12 months.
Yeah. Once we get site work done, maybe 12 months construction.
Okay. All other local, state, and federal permits are required. Maine DEP, Maine State Historic Preservation, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, Maine Natural Areas, all provided letters confirming it's a good. Building permit and sewer permit will need to be obtained for site plan review. Site maps were provided and they were accepted by the planner. Estimated water and sewage provided. Exhibit 9, and as I just mentioned, we have the letters from the sewer and water districts. The site can connect to the sewer. An HHE 200 form is not required since they were not on septic. Vehicle and pedestrian traffic provided. Site map does show access and internal traffic measures, and the memorandum for the traffic impact analysis was also provided. Other information was provided. Yes, quite a bit of it was provided, and if there's anyone who's interested, we do have some spare copies for someone who would like to take them home. Please, because they are taking up my office. Are there any planning board comments for 3.5.1? Are there any public comments for what has just been discussed?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, the document that you just distributed up there, was that the missing photometric plan?
yes.
Thanks.
Oh, I have a spare copy of.
I think it's someone threw it on this stuff.
Yeah, it's right here.
Right, section 3.5.2. Title block, C1000, the C1000 site map does have the title block, name of engineers and professionals provided. That is also on the cover sheet, and the G001 site map collection. Planning board approval block, that was missing, however, you did make that adjustment to the copy you provided tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Revision block, that is on the right side of the site map. Conditions of approval block. Same thing, I pointed it out, but I believe you have the condition of approval block on the final plan.
Yeah, I might actually have to bring that one or send that out separately for you then.
Okay,
For final signature then.
okay, so those will just be conditioned. Building and structure drawings, those were included in the appendix, and we just saw about a front facing view of it a bit earlier. estimated peak hour of traffic and average daily traffic. Exhibit 5 gives the traffic impact analysis and anticipation of 42 to 64 trips for peak hours. Site map prepared by a professional engineer or architect. They were done by Henry Hess of Sebago Technics. Stormwater erosion plans. Maine DEP stormwater permit was issued on June 6, 2024. Exhibit 6 shows the application. Technical and financial capacity. Exhibit 8 does show the resumes of the engineers involved, as well as some cost estimates. And I just provided to the rest of the planning board tonight an additional 10 pages going over. Can you describe what the document was again, or what was sent? The financial and technical capacity?
Financial capacity should have been a letter of credit and then financial statements as well for Maine Health, kind of proving that they have the financial capacity to bear the project.
Yeah.
As well as, technical capacity should have been a number of pages of resumes, as well as their previous projects.
Contour lines on the maps. The C200 maps show contour lines of 1 foot changes. Fire protection provisions. Exhibit 9 notes the building will be sprinkled and can accommodate fire truck. This will be brought up a bit later, but and this is usually a thing the fire chief brings up. Usually a lot of these buildings will have a lockbox installed on them. Is that all right for Maine Health?
Yeah, Knox box.
Knox box to be on the building.
Yeah.
Are there any comments for section 3.5.2?
Well, I was wondering, to your point, I wonder whether we can make it a part of the process here that Maine Health is going to appeal to our state senator and to our representative to intercede with DOT to try to get this change made to the traffic situation. Because I'd like to see Maine Health actually take some initiative here, despite what DOT may say, to actually, institute that change there. It's going to be a problem, and I think that you have some responsibility, at least try to make that change. Because I think that will alleviate some of the concerns of the residents, and it will, frankly, alleviate one of the concerns I have too. I mean, I think we all have about this problem. I don't really care what DOT thinks about what the traffic's there. It's going to be a problem. So I'd rather get ahead of it and have you guys get ahead of it rather than, forcing that requirement or that appeal on the local people to do it for you. I'd rather you do it, or we all do it, but because I think if we did, they would probably, with the help of the senator and representative, they might be willing to show some flexibility there. So I personally like to make that a part of the approval process, that you would at least make that appeal. Personally.
I'm also fine doing a joint letter of support where I just note that this has been voiced by a lot of people here at this planning board meeting, and if Maine Health would be one to maybe consider signing on, that'd be appreciated as well.
I think it's a nice addition to the property. I like everything but the traffic problem.
Yeah.
I think it's a great project,
I agree. I do. I agree.
except for that, and that is a major problem.
Okay, if you're willing to do that.
I'll reach out to DOT again. I'll send them maybe this whole meeting and say, hey, can you please take a look at these parts where you have the residents themselves point this out?
Well, and if necessary, get our state senator and our representative involved in the process, because a little bit of political clout will help here, certainly, I think.
The good news, it's near Route 1. The bad news is it's near Route 1.
Pick a spot on Route 1 anytime during summer in Maine.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wiscasset, Kennebunk, York, Camden.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
All right,
Right? Welcome to Maine.
I'll make a note of that. Any other comments for 3.5.2? Brendan?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, there is no erosion control plan that's provided in this application, and the reason why is that in a situation like this, your engineering team doesn't do that. That's the role of the contractor who will later be awarded the contract. I would suggest that the board consider, asking for that to be provided, once the contract is awarded and the erosion control plans get done. So that we know what's being done out there.
Is this something you would review during the building permit process? Or not?
I don't know.
Marcus out to offer too that all details for erosion control and stabilize the site should be one of the last pages in the plan set. It's an entire page for notes directing contractors how to stabilize the site. All slopes that are any greater than 3 to 1, so essentially 2 to 1 slopes shall be stabilized with additional erosion control. The plans do call out filter barriers on the bottom sides of the slopes, especially on the down. We actually do a double row. At the bottom, the very bottom of the site, we do double row of filter barriers as there is, further downhill, things like wetlands, rivers, etc. So we have double row filter barriers called out there. Details for implementation of filter barriers, erosion control,
So
stabilized
it's all in
construction.
text on the last pages, and
Yep,
no
it's-
drawings per
correct.
se.
Correct. There's not necessarily a formal plan, but it is detailed out as to how to stabilize and stabilize the site, provide erosion control.
And that has worked for you in the past?
It certainly has. I'm not trying to negate any idea that there should be also another plan provided by a contractor, but I'm just putting it on the record that the plans do provide detailed instructions as to how to stabilize the site.
Any action?
Contractors with really good eyesight, that tiny text.
All right. Any action the board want to take on? Anything else or any comments? Oh, Mark?
I just wanted to add, that's part of the inspection process, and at any point in time, if it's not done correctly, I have the authority to shut down the project until such stuff is done. So, yes, it does get, it's part of the permitting process, and it does get inspected.
Any other comments for 3.5.2? All right. Now we get to the articles, just 3, don't worry. Article 7, buffer areas, L100 site plans, showed some vegetation, formal landscaping and privacy fence proposed on the south side on the site plans. And we already discussed a little bit earlier about possibly having a bit more vegetation on the northern one. Construction standards, there is acknowledgement to follow construction standards, MUBEC standards. Electrical standards, no adverse effects are anticipated. Historical village district, this is not located in the historic village district, so it's not applicable. Net developable acreage, I don't believe that was provided, claims that it is not applicable. It's up to the board if you would like to have the net developable acreage on maybe on final plans, or seeing a head shake. Barbara, John,
I'm fine
Permanent.
with it as is.
right? So that would be a
Clear.
waiver. Noise is limited to traffic and work done inside the building. Lighting, a lighting plan will be forwarded, which was provided. The claims of being dark sky compliant. Refuse disposal, exhibit 9 does show plan for solid waste disposal, and we'll be hiring a licensed hauler. Sanitary provisions. This will be connected to the municipal water and sewer systems, and letters were provided by the water and sewer districts. Signs not applicable because none have been proposed, but if any are proposed, Mark will be the one dealing with that as code enforcement officer. Storage of materials, it will be stored in a screened dumpster, which we talked about a little bit earlier. It's in the southern area the dumpster is proposed.
Yep. And the south side of the site.
Yep. Emergency services. We've already talked about the lockbox, knockbox. There was one from the EMS director. And I think if you show the front view of the image again of the building. Yeah, the overhanging piece that you have there, is that gonna happen? I think that was their only thing, to make sure that it's.
That's still in design, and whatever we design, we'll meet with the EMS and fire department, make sure their equipment fits under there.
That was their only item.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think that'll certainly fall under when it's at the building permit under review. They'll be
Right,
reviewing
that was just their
Yep.
main concern.
We've got it, it's on our radar.
Thanks, Max.
Archaeological historic sites, letter provided by the state historic office, confirming there will be no issues. Any questions, comments for Article 7?
Yes, the way you phrased 7.1 was a little vague. Like, would definitely like to see improvements in the screening for the entrance and exit out of the parking lot with landscaping.
Yeah, is there could I suggest if you'd like a condition on that, that we provide some strategic landscape evergreen screening at those intersections where the parking cars do turn?
Yeah, that's fine. I trust you to do a great job. I would like to see something there. Yep.
Yeah, I also have a question about 7.1. And it's been a couple weeks since I read through the requirements there, but isn't there supposed to be a vegetated barrier between any residential property and this property? And how are you meeting the requirements of 7.1? You had mentioned that there was a fence. I went looking for a fence in that location on the drawings and I couldn't find it.
It took me a while too, but you can show it.
We do have a fence proposed along this southern side here, and it is kind of in tandem or alongside parallel the property line there. We are providing trees as well as evergreen trees along this side. The landscape plan shows a little bit more detail as to which trees as well. And I think as part of that condition, adding some additional buffering along this section.
So the fence ends up the first two properties to the south of your entrance road, right?
Currently, it's from there to there on the proposed site plan. Mike, you could speak to a little bit. I don't know if you've already said you'd mentioned to having conversations.
Yeah, there's an existing fence there that's on the abutting properties owners' land that could probably benefit from a new fence. And it's our intent.
Yes, I guess.
Is it a 6-foot tall fence that he has there, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the currently the one that's existing out there, that 6-foot tall white vinyl fence, I believe it's white. Is there, do I hear from the board, there a condition for some sort of strategic evergreen screening at least these locations to be included?
Property.
Okay.
And then. And so the southern one, that's just a fence that Maine Health is replacing
And extending.
and extending.
Yeah, I don't think it goes the full length today, but it's certainly from that property line by the right of way. Down to that property pin there.
Installation. New 6-foot fence.
So you're gonna put a fence up along that line against their fence?
Well, I think we'll work with the abutting neighbor. I think their fence will go away.
Right. Okay.
Ours will be new and
Two
attractive.
fences, it's gonna be really a mess.
We had a,
The gap of fences there, yeah, that's certainly not the intent there, to your point, they're not two
Right.
fences.
Any other comments for Article 7? Hearing none. We'll move to Article 8. Stormwater management, we've already talked about that a little bit. It is in Exhibit 6, as well as the detailed plans that Henry just mentioned. I didn't know if that was the stormwater, what was just mentioned earlier, is that all right, or? Was it
No, that's a different topic.
Okay. Erosion control D100 site map series covers the erosion control. Hydrogeologic assessment of groundwater impacts, not applicable since these are going to be municipal water quality impacts. There are no below ground tanks and nothing will be discharged and everything will be discharged into sewer. Phosphorus control, not applicable since this is not near a great pond. Soils, exhibit 1 does show the soil maps that are not severe or very severe. Air and water pollution, use does not emit harmful air or water. Aesthetic, cultural, and natural values, state agencies have found no impacts. Flood zone, there is a portion of the lot that is in the floodplain. However, the development itself will be located outside the floodplain, as we discussed earlier. River, stream, broken wetlands, these are identified on the site plans as well. And then buffer requirement for water quality protection. No work is being conducted in the shoreline zone or near the shoreline zone. And there are no clearing of trees in the shoreline that are proposed. Any questions for Article 8? Any further comments? Moving on to Article 9. Last one, I promise. And this is the quick one. Traffic impact analysis. Exhibit 5 does show the traffic impact assessments that was provided by Sebago. Street access, driveways, and street road construction standards. There is an interior driveway that accounts for emergency services, is going to be a medium volume driveway, which meets site distance with Depot Street. Driveway entrance is over 8 feet from the side property lines, and there are no new streets proposed. Just very quickly on that one, because someone was asking about it earlier. Henry, how far is the entrance going to be from the northern property and the southern property?
Do you mean how far is the entrance from
Right,
this property line to
Yeah.
that property? line?
No, yeah,
yeah, that's the,
You are about 25 to, well, you're about 25 to 30 feet from here, and you're closer to 40 or 50 feet from here.
25 from the north, then 30 from the south, okay. Making sure everyone hears it. And then finally, parking and loading. Landscaping and fencing have been proposed to shield neighbors from the parking area, and I had 64 spaces plus 5 ADA will be provided. Medical offices require 4 spaces for every 1,000 square feet. Since this is about a 13,890 square foot building, Maine Health is required to provide at least 52 to 56 parking spaces. So this is well beyond what they're required to have. Any comments for Article 9? None from the board, any from the audience? Seeing none online. So,
I do have one more comment not related to Article 9.
Yep.
On 7.1, if the board wants to elect for this option, you're allowed to require a 25-foot vegetative buffer strip between any incompatible uses. And what's shown here now between the residential properties and this property is a fence, which is going to provide a lot of screening for headlights, arguably maybe more screening than a vegetative barrier there, buffer rather. The fence is usually the solution that gets proposed because it's the lowest cost option. You have the opportunity to request that. Just pointing that out there. I don't know if residents in the area want that in lieu of a fence. But I know that there's lots of complaints about headlights there. I was a former tenant in that space. And I know how incensed people would get about, vehicles coming in and out at all hours of the night. So thought I'd throw that out there for discussion.
Well, the one thing about providing more buffering between those houses along the street and the river, at least maybe, I don't know exactly how this works out in the wintertime, but then people might be getting views of the river during the winter, which would be very nice. So I weigh vegetation, preventing them from seeing a field and down to the river. So for me, that's not a pressing issue.
I think a fence is a far better barrier for
headlights.
if it's a solid, relatively solid fence. I mean, ideally would be made out of wood or some kind of something warm and not out of vinyl like the current one is. But I think it's a 6 foot tall fence, right? It has to be 6 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's gonna create more barrier for headlights, things like that, and vegetation would, especially if it drops in the winter. And I think that, personally, I think adding a lot of vegetation like that, low vegetation, not trees, low vegetation, is kind of a maintenance nightmare. too. I mean, it'd be far easier to cut those lawns and keep them proper and keep them trim if there's no gonna have to, to wade through all these bushes in order to try to weed it and take care of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm personally okay with just a good fence that's properly constructed and attractive.
So the other thing, the fence is on the planned south border with the abutters, right? And we've changed the traffic flow. If you look at the practical application of the traffic flow, people are gonna come in off Depot, pull into a spot. When they leave, they're gonna be headed planned north, and they won't be correct. And taking a right, they won't be swinging their headlights. The only, I don't see, if I'm in the lower lot, at the south side of the lower lot, and I want to get out, I'm not likely gonna go around the loop and shine my headlights over to the planned south of Butters and go back the upper lot and come. I'm just gonna take the most direct route to the means of egress. So I
I
think,
think that 25-foot vegetation buffer in the commercial B zone, if it was a factory or something, but noisy or that kind of thing would be, but this is very pastoral generally. It's not really being a noisy kind of thing for the neighborhood.
I mean, you
Or
wouldn't do
ugly.
both, right? You wouldn't do a fence and, no, you'd do one or the other, right? Are you lobbying for one
They'll
or the
do
other?
whatever you require them to do.
No, well, no, I know, well, I understand that, but as a citizen, as a citizen, which one are you lobbying for?
Personally, I think the vegetative solution that grows up over time provides greater level of division between the residential properties and the commercial property than a 6-foot fence.
What happens when it drops its leaves?
Yeah, well, your point about it being higher maintenance is, very much in line with my point about it being the lowest initial cost. Like the reason that fences get proposed for these applications is because they're dramatically cheaper than putting in a landscaping solution that then requires maintenance year after year.
and I guess, how would the abutter feel about raking all those leaves on their property, that fall on their property?
Why does it have to be deciduous?
Well, also, we're cutting our options for potential future community center too. If we suddenly create a forest there and in 20 years, we're able to build a community center, then we're cutting it down again. So I'm fine with
I'm
the
sorry.
buffer plan
I
as
think
it.
Henry was
I
about
was just
to.
gonna say, could I offer, I certainly hear you, that between the fence and the vegetative buffer and trying to, seems like we're kind of striking a balance here with some vegetation with the fence as it is with some evergreen screening. Certainly when screening or planting gets installed, it gets installed really what the mature height's gonna be, right? So if it's an 8-foot wide shrub, they're gonna get put 8 feet on center. So the initial installation at a 5-gallon shrub being 12 to 24 inches tall and only 12 to 18 inches wide, you don't really have a buffer for the first 10, 12 years.
Right.
So I hear that concern. I think we're trying to strike a little balance with that with some of the north side and the south side. A fence certainly gives you that immediate screening. You're not gonna be waiting 10, 12 years for any sort of.
Well, you could put in bigger ones, but you put a conifer in there and it has to have enough room to grow in both directions. So it's gonna be out 10 feet from the property line. I mean, it's a huge tree and ultimately will grow tall. I mean, yeah, I didn't imagine you were gonna put a little tiny.
No, that's exactly how it's done. Yeah, that's exactly how
Well-
it's done. And like you put in a mix of plants,
Mhm.
low, medium and tall height plants, so that when they all do grow out, the large ones have enough room and sunlight to grow to their full height.
Right.
And the other ones fill in underneath. So if you have a pine tree with no limbs on the bottom 12 feet, that's where your small plants come in and
Right.
fill that in.
But
So
they'll
this, to my point about the expense, that's where the expense comes in, because this isn't like a row of pine trees isn't a 25-foot vegetated buffer, like this is a large expense.
But this is what the neighborhood is also used to, is looking at a big grassy field and some of them have a 6-foot fence. It's kind of like, we're not radically changing everyone's expectations.
Well, what are the neighbors lobbying for?
Lobbying
You're not lobbying
for a street light.
You're lobbying for the street.
and a sidewalk,
I
okay?
live across.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I was gonna say that it is at the end of the application. We've gone through all the standards. We can see if there's anyone else from the audience, any neighbors who probably haven't had a chance to speak yet. Any other thoughts? Lobbying for the streetlight, that's on the list now. But any other thoughts? Alright. So is there any action the board would like to take on the buffering that was just raised? I do have the condition that there would be strategic evergreens planted along the northern property boundary near the parking area. And that there would be the installation of a new 6-foot fence along lots 27 and 28, which I believe are the two that you kind of pointed out there.
Mhm.
So I leave it to the board on if you want to take any further action on the buffering items.
I'm fine with it as it's been submitted or as we've talked about it.
So,
Well, I mean, I think that if it's gonna be, if it's gonna be a vegetative buffer, then it has to be something bigger than this. It has to be really well planted and big and big enough to almost immediately have some effect. You know, or it has to be a good looking, I mean, can't really mandate that, but a fence that's attractive. Then because it's your, I mean, it's your facility, so you don't want it to look like crap, right? So you want it to look good. So either one, but not, but it has to be either really a nice fence or it has to be a 6-foot tall, you know, true vegetative buffer. One of the two. I don't care. I'm the skin of the game here. So
Then let's do it as submitted.
agreed.
Fence is the fence and where he's got how it's treated on the north edge.
All right. So I'll ask one more time if there are any other questions, comments before the final approval. Hearing none. So the motion would be to accept the proposed medical arts building at 126 Depot Street with the following conditions. There will be an approval block and a conditions of approval block. There will be an approval block for planning board signatures and a conditions of approval block on the final sign plan. There will also be two. There will be strategic evergreens to be planted along the northern property near the parking lot that's proposed. And 3, there will be the installation of a new 6-foot fence along lots 27 and 28.
That
And
was
then,
already on the plan, so I don't know why we're putting it as a condition. It's already marked on all the plans that were submitted.
I can remove the fence one then if you would like.
keep it in there.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually just in there sometimes. And there would be a waiver of.
No, we should have it because in the thing that says proposed fencing is limited to the dumpster enclosure on this write-up. So yeah, you're right. We should include it.
Okay. So the motion would be to accept the application as proposed with the conditions of the signed approval block and the conditions of approval block on the final plan. The second one would be the strategic evergreens be planted along the northern property line near the parking area. And 3, the installation of a new 6-foot fence along lots 27 and 28.
I'm not sure that fence isn't 8 feet, actually, high.
Don't think they can go to 8 feet.
I haven't really seen.
I have to repeat this motion every time people interrupt me. Unless Rebecca, you don't need me to repeat it next time. Is it
Just
8
don't
feet?
forget that waiver.
8 feet.
No.
8
Hold on,
feet is
hold
a
on,
creepy fence.
hold on. If I can jump
It's
in,
not a nice
if I can jump
fence.
in. Where fencing is provided shall be no more than 6 feet in height and shall be so located within the property line to allow access for maintenance on both sides without intruding upon abutting properties. Except that the planning board may require up to an 8-foot fence to separate incompatible uses. So I have it at 6 feet, but the board may require it to be 8 feet if you would like.
I think it's existing at 8 right now.
Existing at
It's
8?
Taken out.
Really?
Replace-
It's way over their head?
Instead of putting a
Is that
quantity,
how-
is it worth kind of replacing in kind as the condition?
Yeah, place in kind.
That way it's written that whatever, you know,
Whatever's there.
we're not less than 8 or 6, whatever's the height that's out there.
I think
it gets
Replace
replaced.
it as panels might be 6 feet tall, but the panels don't start.
Matches.
They start about a foot off the ground,
Okay.
right? So it makes it seem like.
Could be.
Okay,
What about the condition for the DOT letter? Is that a condition?
yep, I'll make that right there.
In the lockbox.
lockbox.
The, which lockbox? Oh, for
The
fire,
fire department.
not box, got it.
And letter to DOT. So I don't think I had to go through all of those conditions. I don't know, it's up to Rebecca, you're writing a lot of this down.
I am, have we left the fence though? Because an 8-foot fence is a very intimidating fence.
if I am-
A 6-foot fence feels good, and as you say, by the time you build it, it's up.
I think Henry's recommendation of replace like kind is
Yes,
what's there now.
I,
In terms of height, I mean, if the fencing will certainly be as, the materials as described, you know. Wood.
And is it only
privacy
around
fence.
that first house there? That's.
no, it would be lots 27.
No.
and
What is it there now? Is it just for that first property?
The fence, I believe, actually does go at least along, yeah, I think it goes all the way down to here at least, yeah.
So both neighbors
Mhm.
share it. Okay. Okay.
So the language I have is installation of a new fence along lots 27 and 28 that matches its existing height.
Did you just say wood privacy fence? Is that what you said?
Yes, I believe it's called out as a wood privacy fence. I'm just gonna go get the
The wood
call out here
privacy
so I don't miss it.
fence would be very nice. Made out of wood and not out of something else.
Okay.
We call it out as a 6-foot privacy fence. I haven't specified the materials, no.
Does not specify the material.
Right. 6-foot privacy.
People who live there may prefer to have a maintenance-free fence. Looking at them.
Nice cedar fence would be nice too. I mean.
To confirm the fence length with you, it goes about halfway down that second lot today, the existing fence today.
Okay, so
Existing
there,
fence goes about halfway according to the existing conditions plan here. In today's condition, and the proposed condition that goes to here.
okay. So they're used to it. That's all that matters.
So the conditions now read that one, there will be an approval block and a condition, a signature block. I'm sorry. First item is there will be a signature block and a conditions of approval block from the final plans that are submitted. 2, there will be strategic evergreens planted along the northern property line with parking area. 3, there will be the installation of a new fence along lots 27 and 28 that matches the height of the existing fence. 4, we say lockbox. A lockbox will be installed at the recommendation of the fire chief. 5, a letter will be submitted to the Department of Transportation, encouraging traffic calming measures for the Depot Street Route 1 intersection.
I think that's it.
You also have a waiver for 7.5.
Yes, and there is a waiver for net developable acreage. That was the one item I kept going on before. So, that is the motion. Would someone on the board like to say so moved?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second? Eric,
I second.
further discussion? Last chance. Hearing none, all those in favor,
I,
3-0, motion passes. So, Henry, Michael, all those that know, I'm sorry. I keep talking with them so much. I'll do a follow-up email on just finishing the last bits of this up.
We'll get the final conditions on the plan and then submit you a final plan.
Yep, we'll get that up to the planning board meeting.
I really appreciate, just do want to say, I really appreciate the board's time, consideration, the public's involvement. I think it's been great having their say and hearing the concerns of the public as well as, again, just reviewed by the board and through the town as well. So thank you.
Great project.
you.
Yeah, thank you. We do just have quick housekeeping items, minutes and everything, but if people would like to clear out, because even though planning board, it's exciting stuff, people can stay. Yeah,
My
yeah.
stomach, everybody heals well.
Excuse me.
Sorry. Excuse me. I'm weird.
It's fine. Oh, yeah, no, don't worry about it. All right.
I don't know what this is. What is a photometric?
The photometric plan tells you how many foot candles of light
Oh, for the.
present all over the site. So they do it to Make sure that
So
the
these
parking
are
lot's
numbers.
lighted enough, yeah, and then, you have a
But why,
maximum allowable all along the property line, which is why you see the numbers all along the road.
but why are, it's just the road that is given, the information is given on the road, I mean, it's spilling all directions.
Right, well, they, yes, but they only really care about the places where people are gonna be traveling. It's to provide enough light so people can see. And then we all have to make sure that they're not blind to the neighbors.
That's what I'm afraid of.
The-
I'm serious. I mean, there's kill there.
Yeah. I can't see those numbers.
Okay, well, we
Shared
assume it's okay.
It's like the intersection of people, we just have to, the DOT road is literally trying to do something with it now.
All right, all right. So, so now moving on to,
Say anything.
so now moving on to minutes, and now that Johnny and Brendan are back, Brendan, do you wanna take the chair role back?
Yeah,
Barbara,
sure.
do you wanna keep going?
I'm spent.
So, I've read the minutes. I don't have any comments. Anyone else on the board? I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yeah.
There we go. Comments from planning board members? Any other topics?
I just had one question. Is the recreation center, those aren't conjoined, are they? I mean,
No.
that's not a done deal. Whatever they do, it doesn't mean there's gonna be that, correct?
Correct. The community center is a whole different discussion. I'm gonna be talking to some of the neighbors next week, actually,
Right.
in a little private workshop, just to see what their thoughts are on the
Yeah.
community center, and I'm sure traffic is gonna be brought up again.
Well, that's what I was just thinking that in the back of my head. I said, well, no, just shut up, Johnny. That's a whole different thing. But if that goes through, then it's a force multiplier with traffic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I
So that's good.
And
I
We got a
didn't,
light on the Route 1.
yeah, I didn't know.
But who knows when that'll actually go through? When they're gonna have-
Yeah, so it's not, but it seems like that would be a good idea.
So at the third parking space, that the stormwater was designed to absorb that, but it doesn't, it's not absorbed. So whatever the stormwater conditions are created by a community center will. I wonder how
no,
that's gonna
that,
work.
that future parking lot was actually something in the original pre-application as well, but they
Yeah.
removed that, so it's the same stormwater, it's the same stormwater plan pretty much.
Well, he said that, yeah, it's designed to absorb.
Yeah.
From if the additional parking lot was built, but it doesn't deal with the building, because they don't know what the building is.
Right.
Could
And,
be a
and
ten
that's,
thousand square foot building.
yeah, and that's kind of been the difficulty with having this community center being done in tandem, because we didn't even know how much space we were gonna get for the community center. We might have-
And do the net developable areas, that's still, still got plenty of leeway, right? We did a really big building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
The only thing I was just gonna bring up was that, October 10th is the next scheduled meeting. I don't have site plans, I just have two pre-application requests. One is for someone who, for some reason, our ordinance has it this way, they are manufacturing group, but they believe they are a light industrial group. According to the ordinance, the person has to come to the planning board for that clarification, and if you do clarify and believe that the person is a light industrial project, you wouldn't have to approve it. It would be something the code enforcement officer would deal with.
In what zone?
Route 1 commercial A.
Mm.
But,
And what is the project? What are they making?
geez, I keep forgetting what it's actually called.
They're like wind bells.
Wind bells.
Wind bells?
Bronze?
It's
metal?
it's an existing business. It'll be moved from one location to Waldeboro.
Yep.
And it'll be updated with new equipment and so on.
Moving from where? You-
But we can talk about that a bit more. I'll get all the stuff Tuesday and send it out to board members. And then the second one is just an expansion request from Thompson Farm. But both of them are pre-applications. Yeah, I know. Both of them are pre-applications. They will not be almost 8 o'clock, but we are getting out by 4 to 8. I call that an achievement. That's all I have.
So, I'm sorry, so that's gonna be, so we're gonna meet on October 10th. We'll discuss.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
yeah, pre-application. That's all I have. And then I do have some stuff for people to sign, so don't run away when you are on.
Just scratch.
Good,
Oh,
but
nice.
is this, Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Yes.